The arrival. The gleaming spires of the Galactic Warfare Academy pierced the pale lavender sky of Zentura Prime, a testament to the united efforts of 1,000 species. For centuries, this institution had stood as the pinnacle of military education in the known universe, its halls filled with the brightest tactical minds from across the stars. Today, however, an unprecedented event was about to unfold. Commander Zixara, a veteran instructor with scales that shimmered like polished obsidian, paced nervously in front of the Academy's main entrance. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, and his trio of eyes blinked out of sync, a clear sign of agitation for his species. "They're late," he muttered to his colleague, Professor Lamira, a willowy being whose translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Lamira's tendrils waved gently, a gesture of calm. "Patience, Zixara. The human vessel was detected entering our system not long ago. They'll be here soon." As if on cue, a sleek ship appeared on the horizon, its design unlike anything the gathered alien instructors had seen before. It lacked the graceful curves of Zenturan craft or the crystalline structures of Lumari vessels. Instead, it was all hard angles and utilitarian efficiency, a machine built for function over form. The ship touched down with a hiss of hydraulics, and a ramp extended from its hull. The assembled crowd held their breath, appendages of all kinds twitching in anticipation. This was the first time a representative from Earth, a planet classified as a death world, had been invited to join the Academy. The lone figure emerged from the ship, striding down the ramp with confident steps. The human was shorter than most of the aliens present, but there was an undeniable presence about them. Clad in a dark uniform adorned with unfamiliar insignias, the human's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the diverse array of life forms. "Greetings," the human said, voice carrying across the landing pad. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of Earth's United Defense Force. I look forward to exchanging knowledge with you all." Zixara stepped forward, his ceremonial robes rustling. "Welcome to Zentura Prime, Captain Chen. I am Commander Zixara, head of tactical studies at the Academy. We are honored by your presence." Sarah's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "The honor is mine, Commander. I've heard great things about this institution." As they began walking towards the Academy proper, Lamira fell into step beside them. "If I may ask, Captain Chen, what motivated Earth to finally accept our invitation? Your planet has been rather isolationist in galactic affairs." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Times are changing, Professor. The galaxy is getting smaller, and Earth's leadership realized we can't stay in our own little corner forever. Better to engage and learn now than be caught unprepared later." Zixara's middle eye narrowed slightly. Unprepared for what exactly? "Whatever comes," Sarah replied simply. "In our experience, it's best to be ready for anything." As they entered the grand hall of the Academy, students and faculty alike turned to stare at the newcomer. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Your quarters have been prepared," Zixara said, gesturing towards a nearby lift. "Perhaps you'd like to rest before we begin the official welcoming ceremony." Sarah shook her head. "Thank you, but I'd prefer to get started right away. Time is a precious resource after all." Lamira's bioluminescent patterns flickered in surprise. "But surely you must be fatigued from your journey." "I've had worse," Sarah said with a shrug. "Besides, I'm eager to see what this place has to offer. I understand you have some of the most advanced combat simulators in the galaxy." Zixara puffed up with pride, momentarily forgetting his unease. "Indeed we do. Our Holo Arena can recreate any battlefield scenario with perfect fidelity. It's used for both instruction and assessment." Sarah's eyes lit up with interest. "Fascinating. I'd love to see it in action. Perhaps even run through a simulation or two myself, if that's permitted." The alien instructors exchanged glances. It was unusual for a new arrival to jump into simulations so quickly, but then again, everything about this situation was unprecedented. "I suppose we could arrange a demonstration," Zixera said slowly. Though I must warn you, our scenarios are quite challenging. They're designed to test even the most experienced tacticians. Sarah's lips curled into what the aliens would later learn was a predatory smile. Perfect. I love a good challenge. As they made their way to the Holo Arena, neither Zixera nor Lamira could shake the feeling that they were about to witness something that would shake the very foundations of their carefully ordered galactic society. They had no idea just how right they were. The Holo Arena was a massive spherical chamber, its walls lined with advanced holographic projectors and sensory equipment. As they entered, Sarah let out a low whistle of appreciation. "Impressive," she said, running a hand along one of the control panels. "This puts our simulators back home to shame." Lamira's tendrils waved with pride. "It's the culmination of technologies from 100 different worlds. We can recreate any environment, any scenario, with perfect accuracy." Sarah nodded, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "So, what's the most challenging scenario you've got?" Zixera hesitated. "Captain Chen, perhaps we should start with something more introductory, to familiarize you with the system." "No need," Sarah said, her tone brooking no argument. "I learn best by diving in headfirst. Give me your toughest challenge." The alien instructors exchanged worried glances, but ultimately, Zixera relented. With a few quick gestures, he called up a holographic menu. "Very well. This is the Siege of Cathoria Prime. It's a historical scenario based on one of the most one-sided conflicts in galactic history. No one has ever achieved victory for the defending side." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Sounds perfect. Let's do it." As the simulation loaded, the chamber transformed around them. They found themselves standing on a barren, rocky world, a massive fortress looming before them. In the sky above, hundreds of enemy ships hung like dark stars. "You'll be commanding the defense," Lamira explained. "The attacking force outnumbers you 10 to 1, and they have superior technology. Your goal is to hold out for as long as possible." Sarah nodded, already assessing the terrain and the fortress's defenses. "All right, let's see what we can do." What followed left the alien instructors speechless. Instead of adopting the standard defensive posture, Sarah immediately ordered a series of swift, surgical strikes against the enemy fleet. She used the planet's natural geography to set up ambushes, lured enemy forces into prepared kill zones, and employed tactics that seemed to border on madness. "What are you doing?" Zixera exclaimed as Sarah ordered a third of her forces to abandon the fortress. "You're leaving yourself exposed." Sarah didn't even look up from the holographic command console. "Sometimes you have to be willing to lose ground to win the war," she said, her fingers dancing across the controls. As the battle raged on, it became clear that Sarah's unorthodox approach was working. The enemy, programmed to expect a certain type of resistance, found itself wrong-footed at every turn. Ships fell from the sky, ground forces were decimated, and slowly but surely the tide began to turn. Hours passed, and when the simulation finally ended, Sarah stood victorious. The attacking force had been repelled, with over 70% casualties. It was an outcome that should have been impossible. As the holographic battlefield faded away, Zixera and Lamira stared at Sarah in stunned silence. "How?" Lamira finally managed to ask. "How did you do that?" Sarah stretched, working out the kinks in her neck. "Simple. I changed the rules of engagement. Your simulator assumes certain behaviors, certain ethical constraints. I ignored them." Zixera's scales darkened with shock. But that's not how warfare is conducted. There are codes, protocols." Sarah's expression turned serious. "With all due respect, Commander, those codes and protocols get people killed. Where I come from, we fight to win, period. Because if we don't, we die." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. This human, this representative of a species the galaxy had largely ignored, had just shattered centuries of military doctrine in a single afternoon. As they left the Holo Arena, Word of Sarah's performance had already begun to spread through the academy. Students and instructors alike watched her pass, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Zixera and Lamira walked in silence, their minds reeling. They had invited this human to their academy to learn, but it was becoming clear that they were the ones who had a lesson to absorb. As they reached the guest quarters, Sarah turned to them with a tired but satisfied smile. "Thank you for the warm welcome," she said. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow's classes. I have a feeling we all have a lot to learn from each other." With that, she disappeared into her room, leaving the alien instructors to contemplate the dawn of a new era in galactic warfare, one that promised to be as thrilling as it was terrifying. Classroom confrontations. The next morning, the lecture hall buzzed with anticipation. News of Captain Sarah Chen's performance in the Holo Arena had spread like wildfire, and every seat was filled with students eager to see the human in action. At the front of the room, Commander Zixera stood rigidly, his scales a muted gray, a sign of deep contemplation among his species. As Sarah entered, a hush fell over the crowd. She moved with the easy confidence of a predator, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the diverse array of alien life forms. Without preamble, she strode to the front and faced the class. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying easily across the hall. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen, and today we're going to talk about the realities of warfare." A tentacled Myraxian student raised an appendage. "Excuse me, Captain, but we've been studying warfare for cycles. What could a newcomer possibly teach us?" Sarah's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How about the difference between theory and practice? Between simulations and survival?" She tapped a control panel, and a holographic display sprang to life behind her. It showed Earth, a blue and green jewel suspended in space. "This is my homeworld," Sarah explained. "What you might not know is that we've been at war for most of our recorded history, not just with external threats, but with ourselves, with our environment, with the very planet that birthed us." Images flashed across the display. Natural disasters, conflict zones, the aftermath of terrible weapons. Every day on Earth is a fight for survival. Sarah continued, "We've had to adapt, to innovate, to do whatever it takes to keep breathing. And that mentality extends to how we approach warfare." Commander Zixera stepped forward, his voice strained. "Captain Chen, while your unique perspective is appreciated, we must emphasize that galactic warfare is conducted according to strict codes of honor and ethics." Sarah turned to him, her expression hardening. "And how many lives have those codes cost? How many battles were lost because one side played fair while the other didn't?" A murmur ran through the class. This was heresy to everything they'd been taught. A crystalline Thelosian student chimed in, their voice resonating like wind chimes. "But without rules, without honor, what separates us from barbarism?" "Results," Sarah replied bluntly. "Survival. The ability to protect your people, your planet, your way of life." She turned back to the class, her eyes blazing with intensity. "Let me ask you this. If your homeworld was under attack, if everything you loved was on the line, would you rather win ugly or lose with honor?" The silence that followed was deafening. Students exchanged uncomfortable glances, their deeply ingrained beliefs clashing with the harsh logic of Sarah's words. Professor Lamira, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, floated forward. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with agitation. "Captain Chen, while your perspective is enlightening, surely you must see the value in minimizing casualties and collateral damage." Sarah nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Of course, I'm not advocating for needless destruction, but there's a difference between minimizing casualties and hamstringing yourself with rules your enemy won't follow." She tapped the control panel again, and the holographic display shifted to show various alien worlds. Each of your species evolved on different planets, in different environments. Some of you come from worlds of peace and plenty, others from harsh but stable ecosystems. The display zoomed in on Earth once more, showcasing its varied and often extreme environments. Humans come from a world that actively tries to kill us. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, we've had to adapt to it all. And that adaptability, the drive to survive against all odds, is what makes us different. A Volcran student, their metallic skin gleaming under the lights, spoke up. Are you suggesting that your species is inherently superior because of this struggle? Sarah shook her head. Not superior. Different. Shaped by our environment in ways that make us approach problems, including warfare, from a unique perspective. She began pacing, her energy palpable. Think about it. Most of you come from worlds where large-scale conflict is a distant memory, something studied in history books. For us, it's a constant reality. We've had to innovate, to think outside the box, because the alternative is extinction. Commander Zixara, who had been listening with growing concern, interjected. But Captain, surely you see the danger in this approach. If every species adopted such aggressive tactics, the galaxy would be plunged into chaos. Sarah turned to him, her expression serious. With respect, Commander, the galaxy is already in chaos. Pirates, rogue expansionist empires, they're all out there, and they don't play by your rules. All I'm suggesting is that we adapt our strategies to deal with the reality of the situation, not some idealized version of warfare. The class erupted into heated discussion, students arguing passionately among themselves. Some were clearly swayed by Sarah's arguments, while others clung desperately to their long-held beliefs. As the debate raged, Sarah stood calmly at the center of the storm, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. This was exactly the kind of shake-up she had been sent to provoke. Professor Lamira, her tendrils waving agitatedly, approached Sarah. Captain, I fear you may have overstepped. This is not what we had in mind when we invited Earth to join our academy. Sarah met her gaze steadily. With respect, Professor, this is exactly why we accepted the invitation. The galaxy is changing, and we all need to be prepared for what's coming. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the academy. Commander Zixara's communicator crackled to life, and a panicked voice filled the room. Emergency. Unidentified vessels have entered the system. They're not responding to hails and are on an attack vector. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Sarah. She stood straight, her expression grim but determined. Well, she said, her voice cutting through the tension, looks like we're about to get some practical experience. Who's ready for a real-world lesson in survival? Unexpected alliance. The academy's halls, once filled with the fervent debates of students, now echoed with the frantic footsteps of beings rushing to battle stations. Alarms blared, their shrill cries a stark reminder that this was no longer a theoretical exercise. Captain Sarah Chen strode purposefully towards the command center, her face a mask of calm determination. Behind her, a mismatched group of alien instructors and top students hurried to keep pace, their expressions a mix of fear and confusion. As they entered the bustling command center, a massive holographic display dominated the room, showing the approaching enemy fleet. Dozens of ships, their designs unlike anything in the Academy's database, moved in perfect formation towards Zentora Prime. Commander Zixara, his scales now a pale, sickly green, turned to Sarah. Captain Chen, I must confess, we are ill-prepared for this. The Academy is a place of learning, not a fortress. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. Every place can be a fortress if you're creative enough, Commander. What defenses do we have? Professor Lamira floated forward, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. We have a planetary shield, but it's designed for meteorite protection, not military-grade weapons. There's also a small defense fleet, mostly training vessels. It'll have to do, Sarah said, her mind already racing through possibilities. She turned to the assembled aliens. I know you all have your doubts about my methods, but right now we don't have the luxury of debate. Are you willing to follow my lead? There was a moment of tense silence before Commander Zixera spoke. We are at your disposal, Captain. What do you need? Sarah's lips curled into a predatory smile. First, we need to buy some time. Professor Lamira, can you use the Academy's communication array to send out a wideband distress signal? The willowy alien nodded, her tendrils waving. Yes, but it will take time for any help to arrive. That's fine, Sarah said. We just need the enemy to think reinforcements are coming. Next, I need access to all student and faculty records, specifically their species capabilities and any combat experience. A Volcrin student, his metallic skin reflecting the holographic lights, stepped forward. Captain, that information is confidential. It goes against all Academy protocols, too. Protocols won't save us. Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp. We need every advantage we can get. Your unique abilities might be the difference between survival and annihilation. Commander Zixera hesitated for a moment before nodding to a nearby technician. Do it. Grant Captain Chen full access. As the data streamed onto her datapad, Sarah's eyes flickered rapidly, absorbing the information. All right, listen up. We're going to use every trick in the book, and then write some new ones. This is how we're going to survive. Over the next hour, Sarah outlined a plan that left the aliens alternating between awe and horror. She proposed using the Academy's holo-arena technology to create massive illusions, confusing the enemy sensors. The planetary shield would be deliberately weakened in certain areas, baiting the attackers into kill zones. But the most important part, Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with fierce intelligence, is you. Each of your species has unique abilities that the enemy won't be expecting. We're going to use that to our advantage. She turned to a group of mycelian students, fungal beings known for their ability to communicate across vast distances via spore networks. You'll be our secret communication system. The enemy might be able to jam our tech, but they can't stop your spores. Next, she addressed a cluster of photonians, beings of pure light. Your ability to bend light isn't just for show. I want you to create illusions, false targets, anything to confuse their targeting systems. One by one, Sarah assigned roles to each species, leveraging abilities that had never been considered for warfare. Gravity-manipulating Gravosians were tasked with disrupting enemy ship formations. Telepathic Xanthari would attempt to sow confusion among the enemy crews. As she spoke, the mood in the command center began to shift. Fear gave way to determination, confusion to purpose. These beings, who had spent their lives studying warfare as an abstract concept, were now united in a desperate bid for survival. Commander Zixera, watching Sarah work, felt a mix of admiration and unease. Captain, he said quietly, this plan, it goes against everything we've ever taught. It's necessary, Sarah finished for him, her voice gentle but firm. Sometimes survival requires us to challenge our preconceptions, Commander. Your students are about to get the most valuable lesson of their lives. As the enemy fleet drew closer, the Academy transformed. The once peaceful campus became a buzzing hive of activity. Students and faculty, creatures of all shapes and sizes, worked together with a single-minded purpose. In the skies above, the small defense fleet took up position, but unlike the rigid formations they had been taught, these ships now moved in unpredictable patterns, guided by Sarah's unorthodox tactics. On the ground, holo-arena projectors, hastily repositioned, began to paint the landscape with false targets and illusory defenses. Photonian students, their bodies glowing with effort, added to the deception, bending light to create phantom armies. As the first enemy ships entered the atmosphere, Sarah stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Remember, she said, her voice carrying to every defender through the mycelian spore network, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every peaceful world that these bastards might target next. We're fighting for a future where strength doesn't mean subjugation, where intelligence is used to uplift, not conquer. She paused, looking around at the diverse array of beings surrounding her. In their eyes, she saw fear, yes, but also something else, something that filled her with pride and hope. "We come from different worlds, different cultures," Sarah continued. "But today, we stand as one. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when knowledge and determination meet. Today, we make history." As if in response to her words, the first enemy missiles streaked towards the planet. But instead of the easy victory they had anticipated, the attackers found themselves facing a defense that defied all expectations. Gravosian students, their bodies pulsing with exotic energy, reached out with their powers. Enemy projectiles suddenly found themselves fighting against localized gravity wells, their trajectories twisted into harmless arcs. Xanthari telepaths, their minds linked in a powerful network, broadcast waves of confusion and doubt into the minds of the enemy crews. Ships veered off course, their pilots suddenly unsure of their mission. And through it all, Sarah's voice continued to guide and encourage, transmitted faithfully through the mycelial network. "Don't let up. Keep them guessing. Every second we hold out is another second closer to victory." As the battle raged on, something remarkable began to happen. The diverse beings of the Academy, once separated by their differences, found themselves working in perfect harmony. Ethologian's crystalline shields deflected energy weapons, giving a Volcran time to launch a counterattack. Myraxian tentacles worked in concert with Photonian light bending to create impenetrable illusions. In the command center, Commander Zixera watched in awe as Sarah coordinated the defense. Her tactics, which had seemed so brutal and uncivilized in the classroom, now revealed their true nature. This wasn't about destruction or domination. It was about survival, about protecting life at all costs. Hours passed, and still the Academy held. The enemy, clearly frustrated by the unexpected resistance, began to make mistakes. Ships collided in the confusion of illusions and gravity distortions. Coordinated attacks fell apart in the face of telepathic interference. And then, just as it seemed the defenders might falter, a new alarm sounded. But this one was different. This was a sound of hope. Professor Lamira, her tendrils waving with excitement, called out, "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. It's the Galactic Defense Fleet." A cheer went up throughout the Academy. The distress call, sent out hours ago, had finally been answered. As the reinforcements engaged the enemy, the tide of battle decisively turned. In the aftermath, as the last enemy ships fled or surrendered, Sarah found herself surrounded by a group of awestruck alien students and faculty. A young Xantharian, his telepathic antenna still quivering from exertion, spoke up. "Captain Chen, we owe you our lives. You've shown us that there's more to warfare than what we've learned in books." Sarah smiled, the weariness of battle evident in her eyes, but overshadowed by a sense of satisfaction. "What you've learned today goes beyond warfare. You've learned about adaptability, about using your unique strengths, about working together despite your differences. These are lessons that apply to all aspects of life, not just combat." Commander Zixera approached, his scales now a vibrant blue, a sign of deep respect in his species. "Captain Chen, I must admit, I had my doubts about your methods. But today, you've not only saved our lives, but opened our eyes to new possibilities. The Academy, the entire galaxy, will never be the same." As Sarah looked around at the diverse group of beings, each changed by the experience they had shared, she felt a sense of hope for the future. This battle had forged something new, an understanding that transcended species and cultures. "No," she agreed, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "Nothing will be the same. And that's a good thing. Because together, united by our differences rather than divided by them, we'll be ready for whatever the galaxy throws at us next." As the first rays of Zentara Prime's sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the battle-scared but unbroken Academy, a new era dawned, not just for this institution, but for the entire galactic community. An era where the strength of diversity, the power of adaptability, and the unyielding human spirit would shape the course of history. The heat of battle. In the days following the unexpected attack, the Galactic Warfare Academy buzzed with a new energy. The successful defense had not only saved countless lives, but had also shattered long-held beliefs about the nature of combat and cooperation. At the center of it all stood Captain Sarah Chen, the human who had turned the academy upside down. As the dust settled and repairs began, Sarah found herself in high demand. Students and faculty alike sought her out, eager to learn more about the unorthodox tactics that had saved them all. But even as she shared her knowledge, a nagging worry gnawed at the back of her mind. "We got lucky," she confided to Commander Zixera one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the recovering campus. "Those ships were just the vanguard. Whatever sent them will be back, and in greater numbers." Zixera's scales rippled with concern. "You're certain of this?" Sarah nodded grimly. "It's what I would do. Test the defenses, gauge the response, then hit hard with everything you've got." The alien commander was silent for a long moment, his three eyes blinking out of sync as he processed this information. Then, "What do you suggest we do?" A fierce grin spread across Sarah's face. "We prepare, we train, and we show them what happens when you mess with the best the galaxy has to offer." Over the next weeks, the academy transformed. Under Sarah's guidance, combat training was integrated into every aspect of the curriculum. The whole arena, once used solely for historical reenactments, now ran constant simulations of potential attack scenarios. But it wasn't just about combat tactics. Sarah emphasized the importance of leveraging each species' unique abilities in unexpected ways. Crystalline Thalassians learned to use their refractive properties to bend enemy sensor beams. Gaseous Nebulons practiced infiltration techniques that no solid being could match. The key, Sarah explained to a packed lecture hall, is to always be thinking outside the box. Your enemies will expect you to use your abilities in traditional ways. It's when you surprise them that you gain the upper hand. As she spoke, holographic displays showcased examples of her principles in action. A Gravosian student demonstrated how localized gravity manipulation could be used not just for defense, but to enhance the power of projectile weapons. A team of Photonians and Mycelians showed how light-bending illusions combined with spore-based communication could create impenetrable stealth fields. The changes weren't without controversy. Some of the more traditional faculty members grumbled about the militarization of their beloved institution, but even they couldn't deny the new sense of purpose that filled the air. It was during one of these training sessions that the alarm sounded. Not the shrill, panic-inducing wail of before, but a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of the planet. They were back. Sarah sprinted to the command center, her mind already racing through potential strategies. As she burst through the doors, she was met not with chaos, but with a scene of focused determination. Commander Zixera stood at the central console, his scales a steely gray of resolve. Around him, students and faculty of a dozen different species worked in perfect harmony, each applying their unique skills to the task at hand. "Status report," Sarah barked, sliding into place beside Zixera. The commander's voice was steady as he replied. "Multiple hostile vessels detected entering the system. Initial count suggests a fleet at least 10 times the size of the previous attack force." Sarah nodded, her expression grim but determined. "Just as we expected. Are our defenses in place?" "Affirmative," came the reply from Professor Lamira, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with nervous energy. "Planetary shields are at maximum capacity, and our fleet is in position." "Good," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Remember, everyone, we've trained for this. Trust your instincts, trust each other, and never, ever give up." As the enemy fleet approached, the defenders of the Academy put their weeks of intensive training to the test. The planetary shield, now reinforced with Thalassian crystal technology, shimmered with an iridescent glow that confused enemy targeting systems. In orbit, the Academy's small but diverse fleet moved in unpredictable patterns, each ship crewed by a mix of species working in perfect unison. Vulcan pilots, their metallic skin interfacing directly with their ship systems, pulled off maneuvers that defied the laws of physics. On the ground, Nebulon infiltrators slipped aboard enemy landing craft, sabotaging systems and sowing confusion. Xyntheri telepaths broadcast waves of disorientation and doubt, causing entire enemy squadrons to turn on each other. But the attackers had learned from their previous defeat. They came prepared for illusions and psychic warfare, with shielded minds and advanced sensor suites. The battle quickly devolved into a grueling war of attrition, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Hours passed, and the toll began to show. The planetary shield flickered ominously, strained by constant bombardment. The Academy's fleet, though fighting valiantly, was slowly being whittled down by the enemy's superior numbers. In the command center, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Lives hung in the balance, and for the first time since her arrival, she felt a flicker of doubt. It was then that Commander Xera approached her, his scales now a deep midnight blue. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction, "I believe I have an idea. It's unorthodox, to say the least." Sarah's eyebrow quirked up, a glimmer of hope sparking in her chest. "Unorthodox is my middle name, Commander. What do you have in mind?" As Xera outlined his plan, Sarah's eyes widened. It was audacious, borderline insane, and flew in the face of every military doctrine in the galaxy. It was perfect. "Commander," Sarah said, a fierce grin spreading across her face, "I do believe you've been paying attention in class. Let's do it." What followed would be remembered in Academy legend for generations to come. Using a combination of Gravosian power and photonian illusions, they created the appearance of a spatial anomaly forming in the heart of the enemy fleet. As the hostile ships scrambled to avoid the perceived danger, the Academy's forces struck. Mycelian spores, specially cultivated to thrive in the vacuum of space, were launched in massive clouds. They infiltrated enemy ships through microscopic gaps, growing at an accelerated rate and interfacing with ship systems. Within minutes, entire sections of the enemy fleet found their control systems overridden, their weapons turned against their own allies. Meanwhile, a strike team led by Sarah herself used Nebulon cloaking techniques to board the enemy flagship. In a daring raid that combined human ingenuity with alien abilities, they fought their way to the bridge and seized control. As the enemy commanders were brought into custody, the remaining hostile ships, now leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. The Academy erupted in cheers, the sound of victory echoing across the planet. In the aftermath, as the adrenaline of battle faded, Sarah found herself surrounded by a group of exhausted but exhilarated students and faculty. Beings of all shapes and sizes looked at her with newfound respect and admiration. "You did it, Captain," a young Thelosian student said, her crystalline form glittering with excitement. "You saved us all." Sarah shook her head, a tired but genuine smile on her face. "No," she said, her voice filled with pride. "We did it. All of us together. This victory belongs to every being who stood up and fought, who dared to think differently and trust in each other." As she looked around at the diverse group of aliens, each changed by the crucible of battle, Sarah felt a surge of hope for the future. This wasn't just a military victory. It was the birth of something new. A way of thinking, of cooperating that transcended species and cultures. Commander Xera approached, his scales now a vibrant, joyous gold. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I believe it's safe to say that your tenure at the Academy has been educational for us all." Sarah laughed, the sound tinged with both exhaustion and elation. "Oh, Commander," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "we're just getting started. After all, the best defense is a good education, right?" As the first light of a new day broke over the horizon, illuminating a campus battered but unbroken, The Galactic Warfare Academy stood as a beacon of hope and unity. It was no longer just a school, but a crucible where the future of galactic cooperation and defense would be forged. And at its heart stood a human woman, a daughter of Earth, ready to lead the charge into a new era of understanding, innovation, and strength through diversity. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was exactly the point. A new understanding. The weeks following the second, more intense battle at the Galactic Warfare Academy were a whirlwind of activity. As news of the unconventional victory spread across the galaxy, delegations from hundreds of worlds descended upon Zentura Prime. They came seeking knowledge, alliances, and a glimpse of the human who had turned galactic military doctrine on its head. Captain Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a storm of attention. Her days were filled with debriefings, lectures, and diplomatic meetings. But through it all, she remained focused on what she saw as the true lesson of recent events. The victory we achieved wasn't about superior firepower or even clever tactics, she explained to a packed auditorium of dignitaries from across the galaxy. It was about unity, about leveraging our differences as strengths rather than seeing them as weaknesses. As she spoke, holographic displays showcased moments from the battle. A Nebulon infiltrator working in perfect sync with a Photonian illusionist, a Gravosian and a Vulcaran combining their powers to create a makeshift gravity slingshot for allied ships. Each image a testament to the power of cooperation. For too long, the galaxy has seen diversity as a challenge to be managed. Sarah continued, her voice passionate. But what we've shown here is that our differences are our greatest asset. When we come together, combining our unique abilities and perspectives, we become something greater than the sum of our parts. In the front row, Commander Zixera nodded approvingly, his scales a warm, proud orange. Beside him, Professor Lamira's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in agreement. As the lecture concluded, the auditorium erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds, the equivalent of applause from 100 different species. But even as Sarah basked in the moment, she knew that the real work was just beginning. In the days that followed, the Academy became a hub of galactic cooperation. New courses were developed, blending traditional military theory with the practical lessons learned from the recent battles. Students from previously isolationist species began to arrive, eager to be part of this new approach to galactic security. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As Sarah walked the halls of the Academy one evening, she overheard a heated discussion between a group of students. "But the human ways are so brutal," a Phalosian was saying, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "Is this really what we want to become?" Sarah paused, listening intently. It was a valid concern, one she had grappled with herself many times. A Vulcaran student, his metallic skin gleaming in the soft light, responded, "You're missing the point. It's not about becoming brutal. It's about being prepared, about valuing survival over outdated notions of warfare." "Exactly," chimed in a Zenthuri, her telepathic antennae quivering. "Captain Chen has shown us that true strength lies in adaptability, in thinking beyond our preconceptions." Sarah smiled to herself as she continued on her way. The students were learning, debating, growing. It was exactly what she had hoped for. As weeks turned into months, the changes at the Academy began to ripple out across the galaxy. Trade routes were restructured with defense in mind, incorporating the unique abilities of various species. Diplomatic protocols were revised, emphasizing the importance of understanding and leveraging cultural differences. But perhaps the most significant change came in the form of a new galactic defense initiative. Led by the Academy, it brought together ships and crews from hundreds of worlds, each contributing their unique strengths to create a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. On the day the initiative was officially launched, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Academy's newly constructed space station. Beside her were Commander Zixera and Professor Lamira, watching as the combined fleet performed intricate maneuvers against the backdrop of Zentura Prime. "It's beautiful," Lamira said, her tendrils waving gently. I never imagined I'd see such cooperation in my lifetime. Zixera nodded, his scales a contemplative blue. Indeed, we've come so far in such a short time. And yet, I can't help but wonder what challenges await us next. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the fleet, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Whatever they are, we'll face them together. That's the real lesson in all of this. Unity doesn't mean erasing our differences. It means embracing them, learning from each other, becoming stronger together than we ever could be apart. As if on cue, a shimmering distortion appeared at the edge of the system. For a moment, tension filled the air. Was this another attack? But as the distortion resolved itself, a cheer went up from the assembled crews. A massive ship, unlike anything they had seen before, emerged from the spatial rift. Its hull was a patchwork of technologies from a dozen different worlds, a physical manifestation of galactic cooperation. Right on time, Sarah said, her smile widening. The first of our new exploration vessels, designed to seek out new life, new civilizations, and expand our understanding of the universe. Zixera's eyes widened in surprise. Exploration. But I thought, with all the focus on defense. Sarah turned to her alien colleagues, her eyes shining with excitement. The best defense isn't just about being prepared for war, Commander. It's about pushing boundaries, seeking knowledge, and building bridges. Yes, we'll be ready if threats come. But we're not going to let fear dictate our future. As they watched, the exploration ship took its place at the head of the fleet. In that moment, it stood as a symbol of everything they had achieved and everything they aspired to become. You know, Sarah said, her voice soft but filled with conviction, when I first came here, I thought I was going to teach you all about warfare, about survival. But in reality, you've all taught me something far more important. Lumira's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with curiosity. Oh, and what's that, Captain? Sarah's gaze swept across the assembled fleet, taking in the incredible diversity of ships and beings working in harmony. That the greatest victories aren't won through force or cunning alone. They're won by coming together, by turning our differences into strengths, by daring to imagine a future greater than our past. As the exploration ship engaged its engines, preparing to lead the fleet into the unknown, Sarah felt a sense of profound optimism. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, yes, but also dangers. Yet standing here, watching beings from 100 worlds working as one, she knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. So, she said, a hint of her old mischief creeping into her voice, who's ready for our next lesson? Commander Zixera and Professor Lumira exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and trepidation in their alien features. But as they turned back to Sarah, their expressions resolved into determined smiles. Lead the way, Captain, Zixera said, his scales shimmering with anticipation. The galaxy awaits. And as the combined fleet of the new Galactic Alliance moved out, venturing into the great unknown, they carried with them not just the hopes and dreams of countless worlds, but a new understanding. An understanding that true strength lies not in uniformity, but in diversity. Not in isolation, but in cooperation. It was the dawn of a new era, one shaped by human ingenuity and alien wisdom, by the courage to challenge old ways and the vision to forge new paths. And at its heart stood the Galactic Warfare Academy, no longer just a school of war, but a crucible of innovation, cooperation, and hope. The future, vast and unknown, beckoned, and together, united in their differences, they were ready to meet it head-on.